Alright, Ronan MMA, welcome back to the channel. Now, UFC 296 wrapped up this last Saturday, and I do apologize for not putting this recap video out on the Sunday like I normally would, but I did have family over, so it is what it is, dude. We are going to recap it now. We will start with the first fight of the night and work our way up. As per usual, I will try to go through the earlier fights a little bit faster so I can spend more time on the main event, the co-main event, the main card in general, although the prelims on this fight card were a little more entertaining than the main card. But regardless, let us get started right away with the first fight of the night, which is Martin Buday versus GAZEIV, pardon me. Very good performance by the newcomer, GAZEIV. Absolutely just put it on Martin Buday from start to finish and never really let him off the hook, and eventually found the finish in round 2. It was a crazy performance. I did not think he was going to be able to get the job done. Martin Buday is a vet, and he's very good at pushing the pace and kind of melting guys so that in the second and third round, he starts to take over. He usually makes it a dogfight in the clinch. He makes it real dirty. Nothing he really does looks pretty, but every single time he got touched, it seemed to have a pretty great effect on him, and GAZEIV kept finding those shots all night long until he eventually found the finish. So great performance by GAZEIV, especially as a newcomer in the UFC, and it will be very interesting to see what he can do moving forward. Pardon me. Now, moving up the card to this next fight, Andre Fili versus Lucas Almeida. I picked Andre Fili to get this one done. I just thought he had much more experience, fought way better competition, beaten better way competition, lost way better competition, all that stuff. And he looked good from the opening bell and eventually found that right hand that just sat Almeida down, and he finished it off from there. Absolute wonderful performance by Andre Fili. He looked good all night. He looked very loose in there. He was staying long, poking at him, doing all sorts of weird movement and shit like that, coming in from different angles, and Almeida just couldn't really get started. And when that right hand cracked him, he fell real quick. Great performance by Andre Fili, and it's good to see him get back in the win column because he has had a bit of a rocky last couple of years, kind of on and off. In terms of his fight career, obviously. Now, moving up the card to Tagir ULANBEKOV versus Cody Durden. I picked Tagir ULANBEKOV to get the job done. I wasn't sure that he would be able to submit Cody Durden, although I had said that Cody Durden had been submitted in the past. He did eventually find that in round 2. Great performance by him. He did have a few moments of adversity. Cody Durden cracked him with some big shots. Cody Durden got a couple of takedowns of his own. Cody Durden was out scrambling, or at the very least scrambling out of bad positions when they would hit the mat, and I started to think for a moment perhaps Tagir ULANBEKOV might start to fade, might start to gas, and maybe Cody Durden would eventually take over, but that wasn't the case, and he eventually got himself the submission victory in the second round. So great performance by Tagir ULANBEKOV beating Cody Durden. This was a fun fight, actually, overall. Moving up the card to Casey O'Neill versus Ariane Lipski. Man, I picked Casey O'Neill to get this one done, but I did say I would not bet on it because there's no way Casey O'Neill should ever be a minus 200 or anything along those lines. She's just not that good. However, Ariane Lipski had shown multiple times in her career that her ground game is absolutely her weakness. She's been dominated on the ground by girls who have been dominated on the ground by Casey O'Neill, like Antonina Shevchenko, who the ground game is essentially her weakness also. She finished on Ariane Lipski on the ground, pardon me. Ariane Lipski came out looking way better basically everywhere. Now, I assumed she would have the striking edge in this fight, but it was a much wider gap than I would have imagined. She looked very good on the feet. She was piecing Casey O'Neill up consistently throughout that fight. Casey O'Neill really only shot 1 or 2 takedowns, I think, and they were immediately defended, so she was kind of discouraged from doing so. Also, every time she tried to close the distance, she was getting punished by something from Ariane Lipski. And then in that second round, Ariane Lipski ends up getting the submission, which was absolutely mind-blowing to me. I did not expect that whatsoever. I will say, though, I said this in my picks video, and I'll say it again now. I said, I hope Casey O'Neill loses, even though I'm picking her, because I don't want to hear her speak, okay? And she didn't have to speak, thankfully, because she got submitted by a girl who she absolutely should have had the edge on the ground against, although she was hurt before it went there right on the feet. So great performance by Ariane Lipski. You could tell that she improved multiple facets of her game. I hate to use that word because Brendan Schaub has destroyed it, but regardless, dude, great performance by Ariane Lipski. And holy shit, dude, and as an underdog, my bad, stuttered real bad there. Moving up the card too, Cody Garbrandt versus Brian Kelleher. Hey, I picked Cody Garbrandt to get this one done. I thought this was a winnable fight for him. It ended very quickly, although I will say there were some things in here that had me looking positively at Cody Garbrandt perhaps in the future. So he got tagged with a couple of shots. He looked okay. He didn't look overly concerned, whereas when he fought Trevin Jones, and to be fair, Trevin Jones hits harder than Brian Kelleher, and I said this in my picks video also, When he fought Trevin Jones in that third round, Cody started to maybe fade a little bit because he was using such a wrestling-heavy game plan. Trevin Jones cracked him with a shot, and Cody Garbrandt was on his bike. He did not want to engage whatsoever. He was running, essentially. Actually, literally, he ran away at one point, but regardless. I thought Cody would be able to get this one done because I didn't think Brian Kelleher hits hard enough to even, crack a chin like Cody Garbrandt's, and I didn't think that he would be really... he's just not fast enough. He's not whatever, all this shit, right? So Cody's the more skilled individual. I thought that if Brian Kelleher was able to knock him out, Jesus Christ, Cody Garbrandt should probably retire, even though he is only 32 years old. But that didn't happen. Cody flatlined him, and I hope Brian Kelleher is okay, because the way he grabbed his face it was reminiscent of when Michael Venom Page put that big fat dent in Cyborg's forehead, okay, in the way that Cyborg fell to the ground. He was covering his face. Like, it wasn't that he was knocked out, he just did not want to continue because he knew something was wrong, and the way Kelleher kind of fell reminded me of that. He was covering his face up and all that shit. But regardless, as I said, Cody got cracked, looked good, wasn't like terrified to engage, and just quick as ever, which, I mean, we've come to expect that from Cody Garbrandt. But good to see him get back in the win column, and he is only 32 years old, so he does have time for him, to get better and to maybe even work up the ladder a little bit. I will also say this: I do kind of like that he's been taking more time off in between fights, because it's giving his brain a chance to heal. He wasn't that smart to begin with. He sure as fuck isn't any smarter, okay? But either way, dude, he called out Davidson Figueiredo, a decent call out, although I would fear what happens if Davidson Figueiredo's fist touches Cody Garbrandt's chin. But regardless, great performance by Cody Garbrandt. Moving up the card, too. This fight I thought was going to be an absolute dud. I thought this was going to be the worst fight of the night, and it ended up getting fight of the night. Irene Aldana versus Karol Rosa. Holy shit, dude. I picked Irene Aldana to get this one done also. I started to get a little bit concerned in that first round when all she was doing was that real high guard that she did against Amanda Nunes. And I know that's kind of how she fights, and it's just a real high and tight boxing guard, but it also affects your own vision. She basically covers up everything. So I was getting concerned. She wasn't doing a whole lot. Karol Rosa was leg kicking her constantly, seemed to be having much more success in that first round. And then Irene Aldana, despite her leg being a balloon, unironically, continued to march forward, didn't really have any, she wasn't really showing any signs that she wasn't going to be able to continue to stand on it. She started to turn things up in the second round and in the third round also. She just had the more damaging shots, in my opinion. Like, Karol Rosa's face was kind of a mess towards the end of that, whereas Irene Aldana, the only real damage she took was essentially those leg kicks. Now, I feel as though she should probably try to come up with a defense for those, or at the very least, like, something to address them, or be able to switch stances, or God knows, because, I mean, I don't think she checked a single one. I don't think she pulled her leg out of the way of a single one. Now, this does kind of come with such a boxing heavy stance. She's very, very heavy on that lead leg, so that she can put a lot of power into her punches, but still, there will be women that are better than Karol Rosa that will take full advantage of that, and you might not be able to take as many leg kicks from those girls as you were able to take from Karol Rosa. But overall, a phenomenal fight. I was thoroughly surprised and thoroughly entertained, and I was glad because, as I said, I thought this was going to be an absolute dud. I was just glad they didn't put it on the main card, do you know what I mean? And then I thought, holy shit, this fight was more exciting than anything that happened on the main card. But either way, moving up the card too, Alonzo Menifield versus Dustin Jacoby. I picked Dustin Jacoby to get this one done. I was a little hesitant. I said that I'm not overly confident in this pick. He was a pretty large favorite, which was part of why I was a little less confident, because I just kept thinking Alonzo Menifield can crack real hard, and Dustin Jacoby does not crack. He will piece you up. He will land way more shots. He might do enough to win rounds if he doesn't get dropped and hurt against a giant man like Alonzo Menifield, and that's kind of what happened, just optically speaking. And, you know, he got dropped multiple times, hurt multiple times, or it says he only got one knockdown, but still, there were multiple times where he clearly got hurt. He did outstrike Alonzo Menifield in every single round, but just optically speaking, he got hurt much more than he hurt Alonzo Menifield, Jesus Christ. On the numbers, it was a close fight overall, and this kind of is a theme with Dustin Jacoby. This happened to him against Khalil Roundtree. This happened to him against Azamat, where he'll do more overall, but it's just the more damaging shots are landed by his opponent. Now, I thought he was robbed in both of those fights. I would have to go back and rewatch this one to make a strong claim about a robbery. I don't think I remember being overly upset by the decision, but regardless, you know, good performance by Alonzo Menifield, making adjustments, okay, and listening to his coach Mark Montoya, who was telling him how and what punches to land and when to land them, and you know, all this shit. So, or no, fucking hell, dude, I just mixed up the coaches. It doesn't matter, dude. Either way, good performance by Alonzo Menifield. Was able to get it done just simply by hurting Dustin Jacoby. I don't know how I mixed those coaches up. Either way, dude, we're at the main card. Moving up the card too, Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. This was another one I was not overly fucking confident in, and it was Bryce Mitchell. I just thought that we've seen Josh Emmett look not very good in his last few fights. We've seen him look like a fucking dead man on the scales, and I just wasn't sure if he was going to... And also, he's very predictable, right? He is definitely probably the hardest hitting 145er to ever fight in the UFC, but it's all an overhand right. He dips his level as if he's going to shoot a takedown. He throws an overhand right. And I feel as though everybody should be fully aware of that by now. I picked Bryce Mitchell to win because I thought he was going to be able to dominate him on the ground, even though Josh Emmett is a pretty good wrestler, so it would probably take a bit to get him there. But Bryce Mitchell, I said this in my picks video, his striking is so sloppy and he takes a lot of damage, and while he was able to take damage against Dan Ige, I don't know that he could take damage against Josh Emmett, and that was definitely the case. That was one of the worst knockouts by a punch I've ever seen, in recent memory at the very least. I don't remember ever seeing a guy kind of seizure from a fucking punch knockout, dude. Brutal. It was not great to see. You could see that Bryce Mitchell was very upset and disappointed after the fact. But he's just so sloppy on the feet, man. That left hand was nowhere near his fucking chin. Josh Emmett dropped his level. Bryce Mitchell's left hand was like down here. And then Josh Emmett drops overhand right and just slept him badly. So, good for Josh Emmett. Bet it felt absolutely phenomenal to get back in the win column after a very tough 2023, getting finished by Yair Rodriguez and then basically getting absolutely dominated by Ilia Topuria, which this fight actually, in my opinion, makes Ilia Topuria it makes him look even better. This like that helped Topuria's win over Josh Emmett age pretty goddamn good. Yeah, man, good performance by Josh Emmett. Scary knockout. Bryce Mitchell really needs to work on his striking, otherwise there's no fucking way he makes it anywhere past what he's at right now. And I like Bryce Mitchell. I'm not trying to shit on the guy, but he has got no pop on his shots, and defensively he's not very good. He's just sloppy all around. He like needs to get the fight to the ground, and at this point every single opponent he's gonna face will be fully aware of that. Great performance by Josh Emmett. Moving up the card, 2, Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. Okay, I picked Paddy Pimblett to win. I will say the only positive here is that it was a very lackluster performance. He looked worse against Tony Ferguson than anybody else that has beaten him in this long 7-fight win streak. And he got him at the very end of, losing streak, pardon me. And Paddy got him after he's been slept multiple times. Paddy got him after he's been submitted multiple times. Paddy got him after he's been dominated on the ground multiple times. I mean, this was a very, in my opinion, I'm not trying to hate on Paddy Pimblett, but Jesus Christ, man, this just made me feel validated that I don't think Paddy Pimblett will touch top 10. I mean, if he gets into the top 15, it'll be because he got a really good matchup on somebody that maybe shouldn't have been there. It just, nothing overly impressed me about this fight. I guess he looked decent on the feet, but we're talking about a guy in Tony Ferguson whose style is pretty figured out at this point and keeps his hands unbelievably low. So if you can stay disciplined and technical, you could still, you could do work on him, pardon me. But Tony Ferguson even cracked him at a few moments because that chin still seems to be a bit of an issue. I thought it was real funny when Paddy was entering the cage. John Anik brought up the reason why Paddy decided to go with the cornrows this time around, and he said it's because he thinks when he gets hit, his hair flaps around, and then that affects the judges, which I thought was ironic considering the judges haven't scored a fight against him since, even though they probably should have, at the very least, since he's been in the UFC. So I don't know how much of an effect that actually fucking had. He actually looked like Malibu's most wanted B-Rad. I know I called Bobby Green B-Rad. Paddy Pimblett on Saturday night was B-Rad. He had a crazy first round, actually. It was a pretty impressive first round, I'll give him that. He hurt Tony Ferguson badly, almost finished him. You know, Tony was able to survive, credit to him, after getting knocked down, after taking a good amount of damage on the ground. Paddy was unable to submit Tony, but to be fair, I mean, so was, you know, Beneil Dariush didn't sub him, Charles Oliveira didn't sub him. And then the second round, Tony came back out there, looked okay, right? Paddy still outstruck him, but Tony was the one that cut him up on the ground with elbows from bottom. A problem with Tony Ferguson is, man, is like, I don't even know if he tries to defend takedowns. I don't understand it. If he just wants to be on bottom trying to attack you with elbows, or if he just thinks that... I don't know what the fuck it is. He's much too complacent going to the ground and then not trying to get back up, because I feel as though in that third round, Tony Ferguson, which I believe he won that third round, could have finished Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett was exhausted. Paddy Pimblett was up against the cage. Tony was pressuring him hard, and then Paddy was able to take him down, and Tony didn't get back up after that, essentially. If he was able to stay on his feet and not get taken down, he could have potentially finished Paddy Pimblett, which was not really a good look to see Paddy that tired in the third round against an old Tony Ferguson. But I'm sure for Paddy, this washed the bad taste out of his mouth from the Jared Gordon fight and got him back in a non-controversial win column. And he'll probably get, you know, unfortunately for him, he's going to have harder matchups moving forward. I say book him and Benoit Saint Denis. I think that's a perfect matchup, okay? Paddy Pimblett versus Benoit Saint Denis. I think they're very even skill-wise, and I think it would be a very fun fight to watch. Regardless, that was sarcasm if you could not figure it out. Anyways, dude, Tony Ferguson needs to fucking retire. David Goggins didn't help him. I didn't think it would. As people were saying the entire time leading up, cardio's not your fucking problem. Do you know what I mean? It never was. It never will be. David Goggins doesn't know how to fight. I don't know what this, you know, it was, you know, I was texting my brother when this fight was going on. And what we were saying is instead of going to David Goggins for like a mental coach or some shit, maybe you should go back to your fucking jiu-jitsu coach in Eddie Bravo so that you stop looking like absolute dog shit on the ground. Because there was a point in time where Tony Ferguson was phenomenal on the ground. He could cinch up Darces, he'd cinch up, like, the dude was nasty. The triangle on his jiu-jitsu used to be much more sharp, much more on point. After the Justin Gaethje fight, Tony Ferguson wanted to be surrounded by yes men, which is maybe why he went to David Goggins in the first place. Who knows? Because that would be the opposite of a yes man. He wanted to be surrounded by yes men, essentially got rid of his entire corner, even though that fight wasn't really a corner issue. That was a Tony Ferguson issue, cutting weight twice in a fucking week or whatever. Just Tony Ferguson being Tony Ferguson. Man, he needs to retire before he drools nonstop, okay? Either way. Decent performance by Paddy Pimblett, I guess. Moving up the card. 2, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I picked Shavkat Rakhmonov. I did say I was torn picking this fight because I thought that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, for some reason, is a worse matchup for Shavkat Rakhmonov than guys ahead of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Just because of the stylistic matchup, Shavkat Rakhmonov just shut that shit down. Now, Wonderboy Thompson had some levels of success, on the feet. He landed a few really hard body kicks from the southpaw position, which I thought could, potentially do something for him there. He never really went high with it after, which is kind of what I was expecting him to do. He was landing that side kick constantly to the body as well, kind of pushing Shavkat off of him. Apparently, Shavkat had an injured ankle, which kind of makes this more impressive because he was able to implement the pushing him up against the defense game plan and then eventually get the takedown and then eventually get the submission. And fucking hell, I wonder if Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is upset with himself because there was 4 seconds left on the clock for round 2. And I remember hearing the clapper and thinking, there's no way he'll tap now. He's been put in bad positions before. He's been dropped by guys before and then put in bad positions, and he always fought his way out of it. But credit to Shavkat, must have a hell of a fucking squeeze, would not let up on it, and Wonderboy was forced to tap, and hopefully Shavkat can nurse his ankle relatively quickly and get back in there because I want to see this guy fighting for a title in 2024. Let Bilal have his chance first. I want Shavkat fighting at some point, though. Jesus Christ, the guy is a savage. Great performance by him, and considering he had an injury and he didn't disclose it until after he had won, so there's no real, it's not like an excuse at play here. Fucking hell, dude. He's so good. Anyways, moving up the card, 2. Alexandre Pantoja versus Brandon Royval. This was an alright fight. This fight to me was more entertaining than the main event, but we will get there eventually. Pantoja came out like an absolute maniac, okay? Maniac. And those first few rounds were unbelievably entertaining. It was a little later on when Pantoja started to get the takedowns more so for the sake of like control time or just being on top to neutralize Brandon Royval rather than trying to finish the fight in any which way, shape, or form. Now, he still did go after a few chokes and things like that, but goddamn, Brandon Royval's got 0 takedown defense. I can't believe that that was a stat I missed going into it, was that he had like a 33% takedown defense, whatever the fuck, right? That's his number. He can't defend takedowns apparently against anybody. Pantoja almost effortlessly getting these takedowns until, you know, later on in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round when Pantoja started to gas a little bit, probably because of the insane pace he put on in rounds 1 and 2, which moving forward, I would kind of like to see him implement a more steady pace. Now, it's not like it's, you know, it's working out for him clearly, right? And he never gets gassed to the point where he's an easy guy to finish. I feel as though if he didn't get that takedown in round 5, he could have potentially been finished, but it's insane to me that Brandon Royval just couldn't stop them. No matter how tired Pantoja was, no matter how tired or no matter how telegraphed those takedowns were coming, Brandon Royval just could not stop him for the life of him. And once he started to pick up the pace in that 5th round, he was having quite a bit of success. Now, Pantoja's tough as nails and is not a hard guy, or is a hard guy, pardon me, to put away. Never been finished in his pro career ever. So I thought Pantoja might be able to get the choke, you know, the same way that he did the first time they fought. There were a few moments where it was close, and I think it was round 3 perhaps, but wasn't able to. And credits Royval, I guess, for surviving, because he was put in some pretty bad situations on multiple occasions by Alexandre Pantoja. But yeah, overall, you know, once the end of the fight was near, it was kind of like, okay, let's just wrap this up, I guess. Those first like 2.5 rounds though were phenomenal in my opinion. Very high pace, lots of output, tons of damage. Alexandre Pantoja was having a lot of success with body kicks. He was the one stinging Royval. You know, later on in the main event, John Anik went on to talk about guys slipping. Brandon Royval didn't look like he was slipping to me when he was getting tagged. He looked like he was getting wobbled or rocked, and it was weird because it was almost every single time Pantoja touched his chin. And I didn't realize Pantoja hit that fucking hard. Maybe Brandon Royval's just got no chin. Maybe he had a really shitty weight cut. Who knows? But regardless, good performance by Alexandre Pantoja. Showing a good fight IQ, I guess, also, right? Because if he's not having success here, or he's not able to find the finish here, and he's just wasting a ton of energy, now he's going to start using the grappling and things like that. So, good performance by him. Too bad for Brandon Royval. I don't know what to say. He needs to work on some fucking takedown defense or some shit. Mark Montoya did get the right coach this time. Had no voice by the end of that fight. He was screaming at Brandon Royval. He was trying to get him going, trying to motivate him, trying to whatever, get him to throw the high kick after cutting an angle to the right. He threw it a couple of times, but there was nothing really. You know, Pantoja's a savage. He ate one clean, but regardless, good performance by Pantoja. A little boring towards the end, but overall I think it was not all that bad, especially compared to what we're at now, which is the main event. Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Jesus fucking Christ, that could not have been a worse main event. This, if we're going to compare this to championship fights, we need to consider the fact that we expect more from our high level, our championship level men fighters than we do from championship level women's fighters, okay? So to me, this was fucking Carla Esparza versus Rose Namajunas. I don't understand. The amount of strikes that were thrown was ridiculous. If you take into consideration it was a 5-round fight, you know, it was just, I felt like Leon Edwards could have maybe stepped on the gas a little bit more in certain scenarios. Now, he probably just didn't want to get taken down and have his gas tank drained, but what else was crazy too is it seemed by like round 3, Leon Edwards seemed to have a lot less pop on his shots than he did in those first 2 rounds. And I understand that that might be natural, but you'd expect a championship fighter to maybe have a little bit better cardio than that. Like his kicks, his punches, everything. Yeah, it just, even the defense seemed a little slower, a little more labored. And it's not like Colby Covington was putting on a crazy pace. In fact, this was extremely, extremely strange to watch. Colby Covington be on the back foot for the entire time. And what I'm wondering is now he kind of attributed this to ring rust per se. In my picks video, I spoke about how between the first Usman and second Usman fight, Colby Covington was he seemed completely different. In the first Usman fight, he went out right away. They started going crazy right away, and he didn't get really dropped until the 5th round, right? Whereas in the second Usman fight, I can't remember if it was round 1 or round 2, he got dropped very early, twice, and badly. So I started thinking maybe Colby Covington doesn't have the same belief in his chin that he once had, or his belief in his ability to recover or something like that. I know he's 35 years old, but I mean the guy's in good shape. We know that he's got very good cardio, but it was weird to see, man. But the first and second Usman fight, much slower start the second time around compared to the first, and got hurt much earlier in the second fight compared to the first. So I'm wondering if he was concerned that, like I said in my picks video also, Kamaru Usman is not a sharpshooter. He is not a very high-level striker. He has a good jab. He has a good cross, and he's got a decent front kick up the middle, right to the body. But aside from that, he's not overly sophisticated. He doesn't have a crazy array of weapons that he can use from different ranges and things like that. He doesn't have a bunch of different setups and shit like that. So I'm wondering if Colby Covington was just cautious and concerned about maybe catching like a head kick or catching a nasty elbow or some shit, because Leon Edwards striking is objectively way fucking better than Kamaru Usman striking. So it was weird to see him be on the outside of the cage, lateral movement the entire time, basically not really wanting to engage. And it seems like his entries are completely figured out, and they seemed a lot slower than they had in the past also. But he always does that like one jump knee to a punch combination. I can't remember the punches that follow it, but he did it against Usman multiple times. He did it against Jorge just to kind of close the distance. And then he does the other one where he drops the level, and then it's the overhand left followed by right. Like, they're all just, Leon Edwards saw them all coming for the most part. Now in round 3, apparently they were even on strikes, which is crazy to me. I don't remember, well, not significant strikes, but either way. Round 4, I don't know. Colby Covington, man, he's just the ultimate troll. I guess you could give him maybe even round 4. Total strikes 19-11. Significant strikes 13-11. But Leon Edwards had the submission attempt. He had a reversal. Colby Covington didn't have a lot of success with the takedowns. He went 2 of 10. Now, once he got one in round 5, he acquired quite a bit of control time, but he wasn't really able to do a whole lot with him. Joe Rogan was driving me fucking crazy, talking about how that wasn't a good look for Leon to be on bottom. Like, this isn't... That's what Nate Diaz fans say. Do you know what I mean? He wins the last minute, so he wins the fight, because if there was no ref or no time limit, who's gonna win? And fine, but that's not what we're doing here. This is an MMA fight with 25 minutes, you know what I mean? And Leon Edwards, when I watched it live, I had scored 4 rounds for him, and I only scored the 5th round for Colby Covington. But I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed in both of them, because I thought, and perhaps this is maybe a little bit of the Jake Paul effect, like early on, when Jake Paul was beating like Tyron Woodley and shit, I thought maybe these guys are so scared to get flatlined by Jake Paul before he was like kind of a more established boxer, I guess, that they weren't willing to really let go. And that's what I thought Woodley was doing the first fight, and then in the second fight he got caught anyways and slept. I wonder if that's kind of like the effect that Colby Covington has on guys, where Leon Edwards does not want to get slept by this guy at all fucking costs, especially after what he said at the press conference. But I don't know what excuse Colby Covington has. It was very strange. I hope that they don't like give him another title opportunity, if I'm being fucking honest, dude, because that was... Donald Trump was walking out when Colby Covington was giving his interview. I mean, he damn near put fucking Trump and Kid Rock sitting next to each other asleep. Because what the fuck? Honestly, dude. I wish I had more energy to get fired up about this shit, because on Saturday night I was very irritated at this fight. And I still am. Because I feel like we could have got something a lot better than we did. And we have in the past from both of these guys. So, strange. But credit to Leon. Good performance. Didn't take any damage. Was very precise and technical, chopping away at the legs. Colby's leg looked fucking butchered by the end of that shit. His stance was unbelievably weird too. I think maybe he's been working a little bit too much striking, and he thinks that it's something he could do again. I don't know what the fuck. Honestly, you guys tell me. What the fuck was Colby Covington doing on Saturday night? Honestly, tell me. Because it was not the same Colby Covington that we've seen fight Kamaru Usman. It wasn't even the same Colby Covington we saw fight Jorge Masvidal. So, strange. Anyways, dude, like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I'll see you at the next video. Bye-bye.